I think when we talk about the hiring trends today, I think there is a tectonic shift what we have observed, where we are talking about today professionals getting deployed or recruited from the campus. Now that's a start, which also means is that the professionals are going through in-house training by the company or by the enterprise they are picked up. Now that's not enough. What we see today is that projects in terms of the nature, scope and complexity have a very disparate kind of a scale and a very disparate way of working today. The past project management frameworks in terms of agile scrum is not relevant anymore. And today we are talking about every project having a different nuance, a different dynamics. Now think of a scenario if an existing professional or a new professional has to kind of start building on these aspects and start doing these projects. Does he or she has a best practice to leverage the knowledge? Well, the answer is no. And I think that's where a very high focus by the organization enterprises on what we say a continuous learning is in place today. The second aspect, which is very crucial, often ignored, is the domain expertise. Because today we are talking about an existing professional also grapples with a lot of new technology, but he or she also needs to get trained, if not in two, at least in one domain, to make it very holistic in terms of the overall experience. And that's where I think if you look at the whole career cycle of the professionals, it's taking a very sea change. We used to talk about an era where you're spending about 5, 6, 7 years in one project in front of one stakeholders, to a stage where the average tenure of the projects is not more than 6 to 8 months. Now that's where a phase of continuous learning will start infusing professionals with much more knowledge what they can take, which will come in terms of the various training interventions what they will be provided by the organizations, whether through an internal ecosystem or leveraged by strategic partners. Well, I think there is no one scientific rationale for this whole, I would say, aspect of what freshers should be kind of, let's say, picking up. I think one of the things what to my observation has changed today is that dimensions in terms of attributes, in terms of behaviors are being analyzed, and you're classified not in terms of one permanent kind of a, let's say, box of attributes. Your attributes keep changing the way you acquire skills, the very swift way of how you demonstrate those skills, and the last piece, which is very important, how you manage the whole ecosystem and stakeholders within the organization. In that mode today, the whole aspect of expectation by the organization is not how you perform on the project, but how you manage the overall ecosystem. The way you come across with your stakeholders, the way you manage the clients, the way you kind of work with your co-workers and your peers and colleagues. I think everything is being judged and everything is being analyzed in terms of making decisions what should be the kind of a career path for you in the organization. The other aspect in terms of what professional needs to be really be cautious about is that it's not about today a cycle where you're trying to just learn. You also have to unlearn those what we say skills what you have learned, because we're all following the Moore's law and should have a very fast adaptability of learning new skills. And that's where what we are saying, that if you've been golden on one project which is in one particular area of technology, one domain, and suddenly you are expected to kind of dwell or deep dive into a new project which is completely different, can you make it golden as well? And that's the kind of a, let's say, jack of all trades is what organization is looking at. So I think what's happening in terms of the requirements of expectation today, as we see a lot of fluidity in the ecosystem, there is a lot of fungibility which is expected by the aspiring professionals and the professionals who get into the job market. One of the aspects of observation and assessment is, do you have a multifaceted personality? Which also means that, are you being just a very kind of a silo focused in terms of your focus, or you can look things at a different perspective, which also means in terms of building a rationale, which also means building in terms of an empathy of learning as well. One of the examples I would like to give out here is that today, while technology is very crucial in terms of understanding, and specifically we talk about exponential new age technology, so is the domain and the business context. Now that's where, if we see from an expectation from the enterprises today, the organizations today are moving very fast. We're talking about an S&P 500 relevancy of just 12 years of an organization today. So in that mode, the professionals, specifically the new ones, are expected to develop a business context, which also means is that they should be going well beyond the hood and trying to understand what are the nuances, complexities of the organizations today, what kind of headwinds what they're facing, and what could be the possibilities through which they should be transforming themselves, which also means that a lot of internal aspect of reading, understanding, and really going under the hood to get that industry more kind of, let's say, focused in their own view should come out. So one of the great things what I think Wiley Next is trying to do is to bridge the gap today what exists as a very, very pertinent set of gaps in the marketplace versus what is expected in terms of the aspiring professionals. In that mode, if we look at today, I think there is a need in terms of building a conceptual and a contextual knowledge. B, there is also very high need and leverageability for an existing professional to understand what new technologies needs to be learned and unlearned. The third is also applicability of those technologies into the business framework. Now that's where Wiley Next comes as a platform where all these set of attributes are demonstrated, practiced, and applied by the existing professional. And that's where a sum total of aggregation of the knowledge, what he or she builds, makes them very, very highly, I would say, deployable in terms of the projects, what they can do from day one. One of the other aspects today is that organizations are losing patience in terms of continuously investing into the training, learning, and development of the professionals. While there is a need, but there is also an expectation from the organization, can an associate or a business consultant or a technology associate can pick up the rigors very fast. And that's where Wiley Next comes to the rescue. It's more of an accelerated mode in terms of learning. It's also a kind of a, let's say, bridge, building an ecosystem of startups, academicians, also in terms of professionals and students coming together where knowledge is best kind of seeked in terms of what the market is all about and how they can become faster and accessible in terms of deployment.